Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? The map stretched across the surface, its edges curling, corners pinned down with mugs and folders. Lines marked in red, arrows in black dotted paths that led into the heart of a place none of them wanted to go. The room smelled faintly of coffee left too long, of dust in vents that hadn't been cleaned, of leather straps from vests resting against steel chairs. Every voice carried weight, bouncing off walls and ricocheting with the sharpness of certainty. But not hers. She sat there silent, eyes scanning the same map as the rest of them. Her sleeves rolled up, veins tense in her forearms, fingers twitching near a pen she hadn't touched. She wasn't asked. She wasn't invited. And yet she noticed things no one else saw. A bend in the terrain that could trap them. A blind corner that could hide something deadly. A silence in the intelligence brief that told her what wasn't being said. No one asked her opinion, not yet. She breathed in, shallow, controlled. Outside, the world carried on, boots on gravel, engines warming, the faint crackle of radios. Inside, it was only voices and silence. She wore her silence like armor, not out of choice but out of habit, because when she did speak, people had either forgotten her or dismissed her. And when she stopped trying, she discovered something strange. In silence, she saw more. There was a story her father used to tell her when she was small, about how owls survived in forests by listening more than flying. The quietest bird, he'd say, hears the loudest truths. She hadn't thought of that in years, not until now. The commanding officer's hand slammed down on the map. "We move at dawn," he said, voice final. "Alpha goes in from the ridge. Bravo covers south. No mistakes." No one noticed her eyes narrow. No one saw the way her breath hitched for a second, then stilled. There was something wrong. But she didn't say it, not yet. The barracks after the meeting carried a different kind of weight. People laughed, nervous and hollow. Jokes spilled too easily, as if filling gaps where fear lived. A soldier hummed under his breath, some tune no one knew but everyone recognized. It was the hum of trying not to think too much. Another man cleaned his rifle with more care than usual, hands steady, eyes far away. She sat on her bunk, unlacing boots that carried dust from a training ground she could still smell. She thought about the ridge, the line the commander had drawn. She pictured herself there, crouched low, the ground hard, breath heavy in her mask. She pictured what she'd seen on that map, the way the ridge curved, not a safe path but a funnel. Her silence tightened. From the corner, a voice broke it. "You don't talk much, do you?" It was Ortega, young, barely 2 tour in. A boy who still wrote letters home by hand because it mattered to his mother. He leaned against the frame of the door, helmet under one arm, grin too sharp for his eyes. She shook her head, not much to say. "That's what worries me." He meant it like a tease, but there was truth under it. She only offered the faintest smile. He didn't push. He walked away. She lay back, staring at the ceiling. Metal frame above her creaked with the weight of someone shifting in the bunk above. In silence, she could almost hear the sound of her own heartbeat. It was faster than it should have been. Something was wrong with tomorrow. But she kept it hidden. Dawn didn't break gently, it tore. The horizon burned in bands of red and gold, but none of them noticed beauty anymore. Not here. Boots sank into damp ground. Breath turned to clouds. Radios hissed. The ridge waited ahead. They moved in silence, only the shuffle of gear, the click of weapons. Dust stuck to lips, wind pressed against faces. She was behind Alpha, eyes scanning side to side, every detail registering. The ridge rose like a spine, jagged, sharp, unforgiving, and in her chest something twisted. She remembered the first time she'd been here. Not this ridge, but another. Different mission, same silence. A partner who didn't listen. A mistake that cost lives. She never spoke about it. She carried it instead. Carried it into every step, every decision. And now the same mistake. She could feel it. Her throat burned with words she didn't release. She wanted to speak, to shout, to stop them. but the silence held her, gripped her tighter than fear. What if she was wrong? What if breaking that silence put them all at risk? Ahead, the commander lifted a fist, signaling halt. They crouched low. Dust clung to her palms as she steadied herself against the ground. Then she heard it. The faintest shift, a stone rolling where no one stepped. Her eyes darted left. There it was, a shadow tucked where it shouldn't be, a glint metal catching the rising sun. Her chest pounded, but she didn't shout. She didn't break. Instead, she whispered low, sharp, urgent, "Left now." The soldier beside her froze. His eyes darted where hers pointed. He saw it too, just before the crack split the air. A shot. Chaos broke open. Voices roared, dust exploded, ground shook. Bullets tore the silence apart. Her silence was gone now, replaced with action. She pulled Ortega down before the second shot found him. She pressed him to the earth, eyes never leaving the ridge. Her hand trembled only slightly. "Ambush," someone yelled. The commander barked orders, his voice drowned in gunfire. But in the chaos, no one realized she'd seen it first. No one but Ortega. His eyes locked with hers, wide, breath ragged. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. She knew what his silence said. He saw her. Hours later, when the gunfire died, when smoke cleared, when bodies were counted, silence returned. But it was different now, heavy, tainted. She sat against a rock, rifle across her lap, dust staining her face. Her ears rang. Her throat was dry. She tasted iron, though she hadn't bitten her tongue. The commander paced, muttering. Plans had failed. Men were lost. The ridge was not what they thought. The silence between his curses was louder than his voice. She closed her eyes. Her father's words again. The quietest bird hears the loudest truths. Maybe silence wasn't armor. Maybe it was a weapon. And maybe, just maybe, she was learning how to use it. But there was something she hadn't told them. Not yet. Because the shadow on that ridge, it wasn't random. It wasn't chance. It was planned, calculated, personal. And she knew, deep in her chest, that this mission wasn't what they thought it was. It was something else. Something connected to her past. And if she stayed silent much longer, they wouldn't survive the next dawn. She stood alone, but what came next, no one expected. The campfire was nothing more than a pile of embers, glowing weakly against the chill of night. The others sat scattered in silence, their faces etched with exhaustion, bandages stained with dirt and blood. The ambush had cost them more than they admitted aloud. A medic's hand still shook as he stitched Ortega's arm, his needle trembling in and out of flesh. The commander stared into the dark as if trying to see answers where none lived. And she leaned against a crate, hands folded, saying nothing. But her silence didn't go unnoticed this time. Ortega's gaze kept drifting toward her, caught between gratitude and unease. He hadn't forgotten the way she'd saved him, the way her voice had cut through the chaos at the exact moment it mattered. But there was also something in her eyes now, something he couldn't name. When the wind shifted, carrying a faint metallic tang that didn't belong to any weapon nearby, she stiffened. The others didn't notice, but she did. She always did. Her silence wasn't absence, it was presence, listening, watching, weighing. And in that silence tonight, she knew one thing: the ambush hadn't been chance. They hadn't stumbled into it. They'd been led. The thought burned inside her chest. She remembered a letter tucked deep in her pack, unopened because she already knew what it said. Her sister's handwriting on the front, the weight of words inside she wasn't ready to face. She carried it into every mission, a reminder of why she couldn't fail. Not again. Because last time she had failed. The face of a friend lost because she hadn't spoken soon enough. The crack of a rifle, the sudden silence that followed. She'd carried that guilt across oceans, through training, through every sleepless night. And now the ridge had whispered the same warning. But this time she had spoken. Not loud, not commanding, just enough. Still, she knew silence was dangerous too. It kept things buried, things the others deserved to know. The question pulsed in her. How much longer could she keep this from them? At dawn, the commander gathered them again. His voice was tight, clipped, hiding cracks beneath authority. We move in 2 hours. We don't stop until we reach checkpoint Delta. Groans rose. Wounds pulled against stitches. Feet blistered, but no one argued. Orders were orders. She studied his face as he spoke. He hadn't seen it. He hadn't noticed the glint on the ridge before it happened. And if she told him now what she suspected, that someone had leaked their path, that they'd been set up, would he believe her? Or would he dismiss her silence as weakness, mistake her quiet for doubt? She said nothing. Not yet. But Ortega caught her eye, and in his gaze she saw a question. He wanted her to speak. The march toward Delta felt endless. Dust clung to throats, packs cut into shoulders. Heat pressed down like a weight no one could shake off. Time blurred into the rhythm of boots and breath, boots and breath. At one point, Diaz, the oldest of them, with lines carved into his face from years of sand and war, slowed beside her. His voice was softer than she'd ever heard. "You ever think about home?" She blinked, caught off guard. "Every step," he admitted. His fingers flexed against the strap of his rifle. "Not because I miss it, because I'm scared I won't recognize it when I get back." She didn't answer, she didn't have to. He sighed, shook his head. "Never mind." But she carried his words with her. The weight of them, the humanity behind the uniform. Every man here had a story, a fear, a reason. And hers was tied to silence. A silence she hadn't broken years ago, when she should have. A silence that had buried her friend, broken her sister's trust, and carved out the part of her that could have lived easy. Now it was a silence that both defined her and trapped her. Ahead, the commander signaled halt. They crouched low in scrub, eyes scanning. Nothing moved. Only wind whispered across the plain. Too quiet. Her stomach tightened. She scanned the terrain, fingers twitching near her scope. Shadows played tricks, but her instincts didn't. Something was there. A flicker of movement, barely visible. She pressed her lips together, heart pounding. Should she shout it this time? Break her silence fully? Her throat opened. But the commander moved first. He raised his hand, ready to push them forward. She froze. And in that single moment, the silence became unbearable. Her breath caught. Her finger squeezed the trigger. One shot cracked the stillness, echoed through the valley. The figure collapsed, hidden in brush, weapon aimed directly at them. The commander spun, eyes wide. Rage and confusion twisted his face. "What the hell, soldier?" She stared back at him, steady, unblinking. "Check the body." He didn't move. Ortega did. He pushed through the scrub, knelt, and when he rose again his voice was sharp, shaken. "Sniper waiting for us." Silence fell heavier than gunfire ever could. The commander's jaw clenched. He didn't apologize. He didn't thank her. He just turned away, barking orders as though control hadn't slipped from his hands. But the men looked at her differently now. Noticed her. Trusted her silence. And that scared her more than being ignored. Because she knew this was only the beginning. There was something about this mission she hadn't told them. Not yet. Something personal. Something that could break them all. And with every step toward Delta, the silence inside her grew louder. That night, when the others slept in broken shifts, she sat awake, watching the horizon. The moon hung low, clouds drifting thin. Her rifle rested across her knees, her hand brushing against the unopened letter in her pocket. Her sister's words weighed heavier than any weapon. She whispered to the dark, to no one, "I'm sorry." The wind answered with silence. But deep inside, she knew the truth. This mission wasn't just about survival. It wasn't just orders. It was connected to her past. in ways she could no longer ignore. And sooner or later, she would have to break the silence, even if it destroyed her. Why did the letter in her pocket feel heavier than her weapon? Checkpoint Delta lay just ahead, hidden in folds of earth and rock, a ghost of a place on a map that promised safety but smelled like a trap. The team trudged forward under a sky the color of old steel, where clouds pressed low, muting every sound. Boots sank into soft soil, radios hissed faintly, and each breath they exhaled seemed louder than gunfire. She kept her head down, steps measured, but her eyes were everywhere, watching, reading, searching. The silence in her chest was screaming now, louder than words she refused to let slip. She knew something waited for them at Delta, not by instinct alone, by memory. Her memory, not theirs. Years ago, during training that had left her bones bruised and spirit cracked, she had seen files no one thought she'd notice. Maps similar to this one, coordinates too familiar, a mission that had failed, and buried in the after-action reports names. A unit wiped out, a betrayal no one ever proved. And in that wreckage of words, one thing stood out: the ridge, the funnel, the checkpoint. She'd been silent then, too. Silent because no one listened. Silent because speaking up meant painting a target on herself. But this was different now. This wasn't just her silence anymore. It belonged to all of them. When they reached Delta, the checkpoint was deserted. No smoke rising, no vehicles waiting, no supplies staged. Just silence. A silence too clean, too polished. The commander cursed under his breath, muttering about broken comms and delayed support. He barked for everyone to hold position, to wait, to trust that relief would come. She crouched near the edge of the perimeter, fingers brushing against the ground. Sand was disturbed, tracks, recent, not theirs, boots heavier than friendly issue, wide spacing, staggered, a sign of discipline. She swallowed, her silence thickened. Someone else had been here, someone still might be. Ortega edged near her, crouching low. His voice was barely a whisper. "What do you see?" She shook her head, not ready to answer, not yet. He frowned, studying her. "You don't trust this place, do you?" Her silence was answer enough. Behind them, Diaz muttered a prayer under his breath. He wasn't a religious man, not really. But when he spoke the words, she felt them as a weight in the air. Fear carried its own liturgy. Hours bled slow. The commander tried the radio again, static breaking in jagged bursts. No contact, no instructions. The men shifted restlessly. Some paced, some slept, some sharpened knives as if steel edges could cut through the unease. Ortega leaned against a broken wall, eyes flicking toward her every few minutes. She never moved far, always scanning, always silent. The silence became unbearable. It pressed against skin, against nerves, until every sound, the cough of a soldier, the scrape of metal on stone, rang too sharp. Then it happened. A flash on the horizon, small, quick, but real. She stood, rifle up, eyes narrowed. Another flash. The commander didn't see it, not until she raised her hand and pointed. He stiffened, jaw set, "Positions now." The men scrambled, dust kicked up, hearts raced, fingers tightened on triggers. But her eyes never left the horizon. The memory burned through her, the same light years ago, before everything went wrong, before silence cost lives. Her chest rose, fell, rose again. This time she wouldn't stay silent. "They know we're here," she said. Her voice cut sharp through the air, startling even herself. Every head turned. Ortega's eyes widened, relief flickering in them. Diaz muttered another prayer. The commander scowled but didn't argue. He couldn't. Because moments later, the first shell hit. The ground split open with a thunderclap. Dust exploded upward, swallowing sky and breath. Screams tore through the air as men dove for cover. The second shell landed closer, shrapnel singing like metal bees. She hit the ground, ears ringing, lungs burning. The silence was gone now, replaced by chaos. But in the chaos, her mind was clear. She saw where the blasts came from, the ridge again, always the ridge. And in her gut she knew. This wasn't random, this wasn't bad luck. It was a pattern. A trap built long before they ever set foot here. When the barrage ended, the world was a ruin of dust and echoes. Men coughed, groaned, dragged each other from debris. The commander barked orders that sounded more like desperation. She sat with her back against a crumbled wall, chest heaving, blood seeping down her arm where shrapnel grazed her. Ortega knelt beside her, eyes wide. "You knew." She didn't answer. "You knew this would happen," he pressed, voice breaking. "Why didn't you?" Her gaze cut to his, sharp. "Because they wouldn't have listened." He flinched, but not from her words, from the truth inside them. She lowered her eyes. Her silence pressed heavy again. But Ortega wasn't done. "Then tell me now, whatever you're not saying." Her throat tightened. The letter in her pocket felt heavier. She touched it with trembling fingers, then pulled her hand away. "Not yet, not here." Instead, she whispered, almost to herself, "It's not just the mission." "What do you mean?" he asked. She closed her eyes. For a second, the memory of her sister's voice flickered in her head, laughter from years ago, before everything changed. But she didn't answer, not yet. Because to speak it aloud would make it real. And once it was real, there would be no turning back. That night, as they counted their wounded and reinforced their broken perimeter, the commander sat apart, his hands gripping his rifle too tight. His pride had cracked. His certainty was gone. But hers had shifted. She wasn't just silent anymore. She was waiting, waiting for the moment when silence would no longer protect anyone. And when that moment came, she would finally break it. Not for herself. For all of them. For the past she carried, the sister she had left behind, the lives already lost to silence. She whispered to the dark, voice shaking, "Not again." The night gave no answer. Only silence. But this time, the silence wasn't hers alone. It belonged to every man at Delta. And soon it would be broken. What was written in the letter she refused to open. The question pulsed in her chest like a heartbeat, louder in silence than any shell or gunfire had been. The men slept in uneven shifts, their bodies sprawled in corners of Delta's broken walls, but she sat awake, back pressed against cold stone, eyes tracing the horizon that never stopped watching them back. The air smelled of dust, oil, and something sharper, the faint metallic tang of blood that no wind could carry away. She shifted, her shoulder aching where shrapnel had kissed skin. Fingers brushed the pocket where the letter waited, folded and patient, like her sister's voice had always been. She hadn't opened it, couldn't, because she knew that once she read those words, there would be no returning to silence, no shield left to hide behind. The commander stirred in the shadows, muttering into his radio again. Static answered him, always static. His face, when he turned into the dim firelight, looked older than the day before. Pride had stripped him raw. She studied him, her jaw tight. He couldn't know that this mission was already poisoned, that everything they followed was laid out like bait. And she carried that truth alone. By dawn, the sky was bruised purple. They ate in silence, chewing tasteless rations that scraped against dry throats. No one spoke about the shells. No one spoke about the men who didn't wake. Diaz adjusted his bandage, his hands stiff. Ortega sat close, shoulders hunched, eyes flicking toward her every so often. He hadn't forgotten her words, the almost confession she'd let slip. He wanted answers, but he didn't press. Not yet. The commander barked orders to move again. His voice was thinner now, less certain, but authority clung to him like armor he couldn't take off. They shouldered packs, lifted weapons, and pushed into open land that felt too wide, too exposed. Every step, she felt the silence gnaw deeper. Every step, she felt the letter burn in her pocket. By midday, the sun was a knife. Heat shimmered across the plain, distorting distance, bending shapes. Sweat-stung eyes burned skin, soaked through gear. Then the first sound came. Not gunfire, not explosions. Music. Soft, faint, a melody carried on the wind. They froze. It came from ahead, not from radios, not from allies, but from somewhere hidden. The kind of sound no battlefield should hold. A woman's voice humming. The commander stiffened, hand raised. The men looked at each other, unease carving lines deeper into their faces. She felt her stomach twist. That tune, she knew it. Her sister used to hum it. Her chest seized, breath caught. She stared ahead, throat tight, the letter in her pocket burning hotter. Coincidence? Impossible. Her silence turned suffocating. Because if that sound was real, then this mission wasn't about territory, or strategy, or orders. It was about her. They advanced carefully, steps slow, eyes sharp. The music faded, swallowed by wind. Only silence remained, but the damage was done. Her mind spun back years, to a night when she and her sister lay on the roof of their home, staring at stars. Her sister had hummed that same tune, claiming the stars moved to its rhythm. She had laughed then, soft and free. She hadn't laughed like that in years. And now that sound haunted this battlefield. Her silence grew unbearable. But still she didn't speak. Later, when the men set camp in a broken cluster of trees, Ortega found her alone, crouched near a stream that barely trickled. He knelt beside her, his reflection broken by ripples. "You heard it too," he said quietly. She didn't answer. "Don't lie to me, I saw your face." Her lips pressed tight. He leaned closer. "This isn't just about the mission, is it? Whatever you're carrying, it's connected." Her chest heaved once, controlled. "Drop it, Ortega." "No," his voice hardened. "You saved me, I owe you, but if you keep holding back, you'll get us all killed." Her silence cracked. She reached into her pocket. Fingers brushed the folded paper, edges softened from being carried too long. Slowly, she pulled it free. Ortega's eyes dropped to it. "What's that?" Her throat burned. "A letter." "From who?" She swallowed. "My sister." He stared, waiting. She didn't open it, couldn't. Instead, she shoved it back into her pocket, her silence returning like a slammed door. Ortega's face twisted with frustration. He shook his head, stood, and walked away. But not before he said, "You can't keep this from us forever." Her chest ached. Because he was right. That night, the silence was broken by another sound. Footsteps, too many, too close. She snapped awake, rifle up, breath tight. Shadows moved between trees, not theirs, not friendly. The first shot cracked. Chaos swallowed the camp. Men scrambled, curses cutting through darkness, muzzle flashes lighting trees like lightning. She dropped low, sighted, fired. One target fell, another. But the silence inside her wasn't fear now, it was focus. Cold, controlled. She moved through it, pulling Diaz to cover, shoving Ortega behind a rock, returning fire with precision. When it was over, when the last echo faded, bodies littered the ground. Enemies, not theirs. The men panted, some wounded, all shaken. The commander's face was pale, sweat shining on his brow. He looked at her, eyes unreadable. "Where did they come from?" Ortega demanded, voice raw. No one answered. But she knew. This wasn't random, this wasn't chance. This was her past, reaching for her in silence. She clutched the letter in her pocket, knuckles white. And for the first time, she realized she might not be able to keep it hidden any longer. Because silence had protected her. But now it might destroy them all. Why did her sister's voice echo louder than the gunfire? The camp reeked of smoke and metal, sharp in the air, stinging every breath. Broken branches snapped beneath boots as the men dragged enemy bodies away from their fragile perimeter. No one spoke much. Words were dangerous now. They broke the fragile illusion that control still existed. She sat apart, knees drawn up, rifle across her lap. Her silence wrapped her like a second uniform, but inside the noise was deafening. The letter pressed against her chest as if demanding to be read. Every heartbeat drummed against it. Every breath carried her sister's voice. That humming, that impossible melody carried across this war-torn land. It couldn't be coincidence. And yet she refused to believe the alternative. If her sister was here, if she was part of this, then everything she had built, everything she had buried under silence would collapse. Ortega approached, limping slightly, bandage darkening on his arm. His eyes held the same question he had asked before. This time, he didn't voice it. He simply crouched beside her and let the silence hang. It gnawed at her. Finally, she whispered, "You wouldn't believe me." His brow furrowed. "Try me." Her throat closed. The words were right there, aching to be freed, but once spoken they couldn't be pulled back. And then the commander's voice broke the moment. "We move in 20. Gather what you need." Her silence sealed again. Ortega clenched his jaw, frustration sharp in his eyes. He stood, left her with her ghosts, and for a second she wanted to call him back, to tell him everything. But she didn't. Not yet. They moved out under gray skies that pressed low, heavy with the promise of rain. Every step felt slower, weighed down by exhaustion and the unspoken truths between them. Diaz trudged ahead, muttering to himself, lips cracked and dry. His prayers had become habit, not hope. Each whispered word was less about faith and more about filling the silence. She fell in step behind Ortega. He didn't look back at her, but she could feel his resentment. Not hatred, something sharper. A hunger for truth she wouldn't give him. And then through the wind, it came again. That song. Faint, carried on air too thick with dust to be natural. Her chest clenched. She froze. The others kept walking until Ortega noticed her stillness. He turned, saw her face, followed her gaze. "What is it?" he whispered. She couldn't speak, couldn't move. The melody wrapped around her, dragging her back through time. Nights on rooftops, stars, laughter, her sister's voice. Diaz stopped too, frowning. "You hear that?" But the commander snapped, "Keep moving." No one argued, but their eyes lingered on her longer than before. And in those eyes, suspicion grew. By nightfall, rain finally came. Cold, relentless. It drenched uniforms, weighed down packs, turned soil to mud. The team huddled beneath scraps of tarp, trying to keep weapons dry. She sat with her back against a tree, the letter in her hands at last. Fingers trembled as she traced the edge. Ortega sat across from her, silent, watching. The rain drowned out everything else. She unfolded the letter. Her eyes scanned the first words, and her breath caught. "They told me not to write. They said you'd never see this, but I had to try." Her sister's handwriting, uneven, rushed but real. "You think you lost me. You didn't. I chose this. They took me because I agreed, because I thought I could protect you, but I was wrong. I'm inside it now, deeper than I imagined. If you're reading this, it means they've sent you close. Please don't come looking for me. You won't like what you find." Her chest caved. The rain blurred the words, but she didn't need them clear. They burned into her memory with every beat of her heart. Her sister alive, embedded. Not a civilian, not innocent. Part of this. The melody wasn't coincidence. It was a warning or a trap. Or both. Her silence shattered inside, but outwardly she stayed still, expression cold, unreadable. Ortega leaned forward, voice low. "What does it say?" She couldn't tell him, couldn't tell any of them. Instead, she folded the letter, tucked it back into her pocket, and shook her head. "Nothing that matters." Ortega's eyes narrowed, hurt, anger. "You're lying." She didn't answer. Because she knew the truth would destroy them faster than bullets. That night she dreamed, not of war, not of missions, but of her sister's face, laughing, then fading into shadow, her voice humming that tune swallowed by static. When she woke, her cheeks were wet, though the rain had stopped. Silence wrapped her again. But it felt different now. It wasn't protection. It was betrayal. The next morning, the commander gathered them at the edge of a ravine. His face was drawn, his voice harsh. "We're changing course. Intel says there's a compound 3 clicks east. That's our target now." Her stomach dropped. A compound. She knew what they'd find there. Or rather, who. The letter burned in her pocket. Her sister's warning echoed louder than the commander's orders. "Don't come looking for me." But they were going. Straight to her. Her silence was no longer a choice. It was a countdown. And when it broke, nothing would be the same. Why did the compound look more like a prison than a base? The walls weren't tall, not like the ones she'd seen in cities, but they were thick. Reinforced concrete scarred with bullet holes and burn marks. Floodlights perched at odd angles, wires strung like spiderwebs across watchtowers. It wasn't just meant to keep enemies out, it was meant to keep someone in. The rain had stopped, leaving the earth slick and shining under the dull morning light. Mist clung low, curling around boots, swallowing sound. Each step closer made her stomach twist tighter. The letter burned in her pocket. The words looped again and again. "Don't come looking for me." But here she was. The commander crouched low, raising a fist. The team dropped, rifles angled forward. Perimeter sweep. No mistakes, quiet in, quiet out. His voice carried no hesitation. He didn't know what was waiting inside. She did. Ortega leaned close, whispering, "What's wrong with you?" Her throat tightened. She almost said it, almost let it spill. But silence gripped her again. She only shook her head. His eyes lingered on her longer than they should have, searching for cracks. He didn't find any. Not yet. They moved like shadows along the ridge, mud caking boots, branches snagging at their uniforms. Diaz muttered under his breath prayers again. She caught fragments. Forgiveness. Protection. Fear. He sounded less like a soldier and more like a man begging for someone, anyone, to listen. The ravine narrowed into a shallow trail. From here they could see the eastern gate. A single truck sat parked outside, its windshield cracked. No guards in sight. "Too easy," the commander muttered. She felt it too. The air was wrong, still, waiting. Her chest pounded, not with fear of ambush, not with fear of death, but with fear of recognition. They cut through wire at the back fence. Ortega led, sliding through first. She followed, the cold steel grazing her sleeve, snagging threads loose. Inside, the silence deepened. No shouts, no footsteps, just the echo of their breathing, the scrape of boots on gravel. The barracks were empty, doors swung open, bunks stripped bare. "Where the hell is everyone?" Diaz whispered. No one answered. Her fingers brushed the letter again. Her sister's words bled through memory. "You won't like what you find." She didn't. Not one bit. The commander signaled toward the central building. Reinforced doors, heavier locks. Whatever was worth protecting, it was in there. Her pulse hammered. She knew what they'd find or who. Ortega kicked at a latch. Metal groaned, the door swung. Darkness inside. The smell hit them first. Not death, not rot chemicals, oil, smoke. And then faintly, that melody. She froze. No one else reacted. Only her. It was her. Her sister. Alive. Humming in the dark. Flashlights cut across the room. Shadows leapt, twisting. At the far end, a figure sat shackled to a chair. Head bowed, hair matted, face hidden behind strands. Her lungs seized. Her sister. Older now, hardened but unmistakable. The hum stopped. The figure lifted her head slowly, eyes catching the light. Recognition cut through like shrapnel. Not surprise, not relief. Resignation. The sister's lips moved. No sound, just shape. Run. The floor shook. An explosion ripped the far wall open, fire swallowing shadow. Screams, gunfire. They weren't alone. Chaos spun around her. Men shouting, bullets cracking, the commander barking orders. Smoke blinded, choked, burned. But all she saw was her sister, still bound, still silent now, eyes locked on hers with that same message. Run. But she couldn't, not now. She dove forward, cutting through smoke, reaching for her sister's restraints. Ortega shouted behind her, "Get back." Her fingers grazed cold steel cuffs. The heat from the explosion seared her arm. Her sister shook her head violently. "Don't." Finally she spoke, her voice cracked, raw from silence. "Not yet." Her world split open. "Not yet." The enemy stormed in. Figures in dark gear, rifles raised, shouting in tongues she hadn't heard in years. Gunfire answered. The room became a storm of metal and fire. Her team fought back, but they were cornered, cut off. She stayed low, crouched by her sister's side, trying to understand. Her sister leaned close, voice barely audible through the chaos. "You can't save me, not like this. You'll kill us both." Her hands shook. Her rifle felt useless, heavy. "Why are you here?" she whispered. Her sister's eyes darkened. "Because I chose this. Because silence was the only way." A grenade rolled across the floor. Ortega kicked it away. The blast shook the walls, tearing more concrete free. The commander roared, "Fall back." She couldn't. Her sister's chains rattled. Her eyes begged, not for freedom. For silence. Again. That impossible choice. Stay, break her free, die here. Or leave her. Live. Her chest caved under the weight of it. Ortega grabbed her arm, yanking hard. "Move." She resisted for a heartbeat, two. Her sister mouthed one word. "Go." And finally, she let herself be dragged. Through smoke, through fire, through the storm of bullets. Her silence didn't protect her anymore. It haunted her. Every step away. Outside, the compound burned. Towers collapsed, flames licking the sky. They regrouped by the fence, gasping, bleeding, eyes wide with shock. Diaz was down, shoulder torn. The commander's face was streaked black with soot. Ortega shoved her against a wall, fury in his eyes. What the hell was that? Her silence cracked, words trembled out. "She's alive." The world stilled. Ortega froze, confusion flooding. "Who?" Her chest tightened. She whispered the truth. "My sister." The air between them turned heavy, darker than smoke. And in Ortega's eyes, the flicker of betrayal. Not from her sister. From her. Because silence had kept them blind. And now they might not survive it. Why did Ortega look at her, as if she were the enemy now? The night sky glowed orange, smoke clouds stretching wide, ash raining down like black snow. They'd pulled back to the tree line, huddled beneath dripping branches, the compound still burning behind them. Gunfire echoed in bursts, then faded, then surged again. The enemy was still in there, tearing through the flames. Her lungs burned with smoke, but it was nothing compared to the fire in Ortega's eyes. "You knew," he hissed, voice raw with fury. "All this time you knew someone inside." She opened her mouth, but no words came. Her silence was a wall again, but this time it didn't shield her. It condemned her. Diaz groaned, clutching his bleeding shoulder. "Not now. Save the fight for when we're not dying." But Ortega didn't let go. His hands gripped her vest, pulling her close until she could feel the tremor in his body. "You put us in there blind." His whisper cracked with anger and something else, betrayal. She didn't fight him, didn't resist, because he was right. The commander's voice cut in sharp. "Enough," He wrenched Ortega back, eyes narrowing at her. Is it true? Her silence stretched, pulling all their gazes tight around her. Finally she whispered, my sister. The word felt like a gunshot. The commander's jaw locked, Ortega's fists curled, Diaz's prayer halted mid-breath. The forest seemed to hold its breath too. My sister in there, she said, her voice brittle. She chose to be. I didn't know until, her throat closed, forcing her to swallow hard. Until I heard her, until the letter. Ortega spat in the dirt, muttering something under his breath. His rage was still boiling. The commander studied her for a long beat, then turned away. We don't have the luxury to dig into your family drama. Not tonight. We regroup, we move, we live. That's it. But Ortega wasn't finished. His glare burned into her like shrapnel. You think silence saves you. It doesn't, it kills us, one by one. His words cut deep. Because they weren't wrong. Hours bled away in that forest, lit only by distant fire and the restless glow of flares. The rain had returned, thin and steady, dripping through leaves, streaking down their faces. Diaz dozed fitfully, breath ragged. The commander checked the map again and again, as if starring long enough might change their odds. And she sat apart, as always, back against a tree, rifle resting across her knees. Her hands wouldn't still. They kept twitching toward her pocket, toward the letter. Ortega sat nearby, pretending not to watch her. But his silence was different now, not wary, not respectful. It was sharp, cutting, brimming with unspoken questions. She closed her eyes, tried to summon her sister's face from before, not the hardened prisoner but the girl who used to hum songs on rooftops, legs swinging in summer air. She wanted to remember that version, but the fire kept intruding, smoke clouding every memory. Her silence weighed heavier than her rifle. Sometime after midnight, Diaz stirred awake, mumbling. He stared into the rain, eyes glassy. You ever think about home? He asked. His voice cracked, fragile. I mean, really think about it, like what it smelled like, what it sounded like before all this. No one answered at first. The commander frowned but said nothing. Ortega shifted, restless. Diaz went on anyway. My boy, he used to run through the kitchen chasing a soccer ball, drove my wife crazy, but she never stopped him, said one day the house would be too quiet and she'd miss it. His lips trembled into something like a smile. I didn't believe her then, I do now. His words lingered in the air, raw and human. She felt them strike something inside. Her silence cracked just slightly. My sister used to hum, all the time, driving me mad. I'd beg her to stop. Her voice faltered. Now I'd give anything to hear it again, but when I did tonight, I couldn't bear it. The forest swallowed her confession. No one replied, not right away. Ortega's jaw unclenched, just a little. Diaz sighed, leaning back against the tree. Yeah, that's how it goes. Dawn crept in, pale and colorless. The fire at the compound smoldered, sending thin black ribbons into the sky. Birds didn't sing here. The silence was heavier than ever. The commander broke it. We move west. Extraction points 2 days out. We can't linger. No one argued. They packed in silence, movements stiff, tired, each weighed by something heavier than gear. As they set off, Ortega fell in beside her. He didn't speak, not at first, but his presence pressed against her like a blade. Finally, low and sharp, he said, if she's part of them, we'll have to kill her. You know that. The words stopped her breath. But she didn't answer, couldn't. Her silence spoke louder than any denial could. Ortega shook his head, disgust flickering across his face. You'd choose her over us. Her lips parted, a whisper escaped. I don't know. The honesty tasted bitter, but it was real. For the first time, Ortega looked at her not with rage, but with fear. The day dragged on. They trudged through mud, through silence, through memories that refused to let go. Every sound felt like a threat, snapping twigs, distant echoes, phantom humming that haunted her ears long after it stopped. Her sister was alive, but alive as what? Prisoner, collaborator, enemy. Her silence had once been armor. Now it was a wound, bleeding into everything. That night, as they stopped to rest, Ortega finally asked the question that had been building. "Why didn't you tell us?" Her eyes stayed on the dirt, on the letter folded and worn. "Because I couldn't." He pressed, couldn't or would. Her chest ached. She forced herself to meet his gaze. "Because if I said it out loud, it would become real." Her voice cracked. "And I wasn't ready for real." His anger softened, but only slightly. "We don't get to choose ready out here." She knew he was right, but the truth still sat in her chest like stone. She whispered almost to herself, "Neither did she." Ortega didn't answer. He turned away, but not before she saw something shift in his eyes. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. And maybe that was worse, because understanding meant he saw her clearly. And silence couldn't hide her anymore. By the next morning, tracks followed them, boots in mud, signs of pursuit. The enemy hadn't forgotten. And if they caught up, silence wouldn't save anyone. It would bury them all. Why did the forest grow so quiet, as if it knew what was coming? The sun bled weakly through the canopy, streaks of pale gold cutting across damp leaves. The silence was unnatural now. No birds, no insects. Only the crunch of boots pressing into mud and the ragged breaths of the few who remained. She kept her rifle tight to her chest, eyes scanning every shadow. Her body moved automatically, soldier's instinct, but her mind was elsewhere. With every step west, she felt it, the chase behind them. Pursuit wasn't just possible, it was certain. And in her pocket, the letter weighed heavier than all her gear combined. "Don't come looking for me." Her sister's warning etched into her bones now. Too late. The commander raised a fist. The column stopped. The forest's silence thickened. Then came the sound. Boots, many, too many, moving fast. They'd been found. The ambush unfolded in seconds. Gunfire cracked through the trees, sharp and merciless. Bark splintered. Soil erupted. Shouts filled the air, both enemy and their own, tangled into one brutal chorus. She dropped behind a fallen trunk, heart hammering against ribs. Ortega slid beside her, firing blind into shadows. Diaz, pale from blood loss, tried to return fire, but his hands shook too badly. "We're surrounded," Ortega shouted over the chaos. Her mind wasn't on the bullets, not entirely. It was on the humming. Through the madness, faint but undeniable, her sister's melody carried again. Not far, not imagined, real. Her throat tightened. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Ortega frowned, deafened by the noise. Hear what? But she already knew. Her sister was here. And she wasn't running anymore. The fight raged on, desperate and uneven. The commander barked orders, pushing them deeper into cover, but the enemy pressed hard. A trap, a net closing. She broke from her position, crawling low through mud and roots. Ortega cursed, reaching to grab her, but missed. She followed the sound, the melody. Past the line of fire, past the smoke, past everything that made sense. And then there she was. Her sister. Not bound now. Not hidden in shadow, standing in a clearing, rifle in her hands, eyes locked on her like mirrors. The humming stopped. Silence. It cut sharper than any gunfire. The world shrank to the two of them. She raised her rifle, hands trembling. Her sister didn't flinch, didn't aim back, just stood there, rain dripping from her hair, calm in the storm. Her lips moved. "You should have stayed away." Her chest clenched. "You're fighting with them." Her sister's jaw tightened. "I'm surviving with them. There's a difference." Bullets whistled past, thudding into trees. Screams echoed somewhere behind, but neither moved. "I thought I lost you," she whispered. "You did," her sister said, voice steady. "The girl you knew, she's gone." The silence between them was heavier than the war itself. Ortega stumbled into the clearing, rifle raised. His eyes widened when he saw the sister. "Is that her?" he demanded. She didn't answer. Her silence screamed it. Ortega's finger hovered on the trigger. "Tell me what to do." Her heart split. One word would end it. One word would save her team. But another word, or none at all, might save her sister. Her lips trembled, nothing came. And then her sister raised her rifle, but not at her. At the enemy behind. Gunfire erupted again, precise, brutal. Her sister cut down 3 men before they even realized she had turned. Ortega froze, stunned. The clearing shook with violence, and then just as quickly, silence returned. Only the 3 of them remained standing. Her sister lowered her rifle, eyes heavy. "Now you understand. Survival has no sides." The commander limped into view, blood seeping down his arm. His eyes darted between the 2 sisters, fury and confusion colliding. "This is what you've been hiding." His voice cracked with exhaustion. "You brought a ghost into our war." Her silence was her answer. Her sister's gaze softened just slightly. "She didn't bring me. I was always here." The commander raised his weapon, but Ortega blocked him. "Wait." For the first time, Ortega's eyes weren't filled with anger. They were filled with something worse, a question he couldn't answer. "Whose war is this now?" No one replied. Because the truth was clear. It wasn't theirs anymore. It never had been. By dusk, the forest lay littered with bodies, friend and foe. Smoke drifted low, curling between trees like ghosts. They found no victory, only survival. The commander sat slumped, silent. Diaz had stopped breathing hours before. Ortega sat near the fire they dared to light, staring into flames as if they might explain something. And she sat with her sister, close but not touching. Between them, silence hung like a fragile bridge. Finally, her sister whispered, "You should go back, pretend you never saw me." Her chest ached. "I can't." Her sister's eyes glistened, catching firelight. "Then you'll never leave this war." Neither spoke again. The silence said enough. Morning came cold, gray, empty. She stood alone at the edge of the clearing, rifle slung, eyes lost to the horizon. Behind her, Ortega stirred, the commander groaned, the world moved on. But she knew she wasn't the same. Her silence had once been armor, then a wound. Now it was something else. A teacher. It had shown her that strength wasn't always loud, that survival wasn't clean, that love could live even in betrayal. She breathed deep. The forest whispered back, alive again. She closed her eyes, holding the silence close. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And in that final silence, the story ended, not with victory, not with words, but with the quiet weight of everything left unsaid.